Have you ever imagined a pope coming from the United States? What does it mean for the Catholic Church to have a leader who understands both the global North and South? How will the future of the Church change under a pope who spent decades serving the poorest communities in Peru? In this video, you'll discover the fascinating story of Robert Francis Prevost, now Pope Leo V, and why his election might mark one of the greatest transformations in the Catholic Church in recent times. My friends, we are witnessing history. For the first time in 2,000 years of church history, an American cardinal has been elected pope. The white smoke that emerged from the Sistine Chapel on May 8, 2025, announced not just a new spiritual leader, but a new era for Catholics worldwide. As the bells of St. Peter's Basilica rang out across Rome, Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost stepped onto the balcony as Pope Leo V, becoming the 267th successor of St. Peter. But who is this man? What path led him to the seat of Peter? And what might his leadership mean for the more than 1.3 billion Catholics around the world? Today, we'll explore the extraordinary journey of our new Holy Father and what his papacy might mean for the Church. And for each of us personally. Robert Francis Prevost was born in Chicago on September 14, 1955, to a family with deep Franco-Italian Catholic roots. From an early age, young Robert showed both intellectual brilliance and a profound spiritual sensitivity. His parents, ordinary working Americans, raised him with the values of hard work, faith, and service to others, values that would later define his ministry. Unlike many who enter the priesthood early, Prevost initially pursued mathematics at Villanova University. His analytical mind and problem-solving abilities would later serve him well in administrative roles. But God had deeper plans for this thoughtful young man. While studying, he encountered the Order of St. Augustine, and something in their community life and spiritual approach resonated deeply with him. The Augustinians, followers of the great St. Augustine of Hippo, emphasize community life, intellectual pursuit, and service to others. Their motto, "One mind and one heart on, the way to God," became Prevost's guiding principle. After completing his mathematics degree, he entered Augustinian formation, eventually studying theology at Catholic Theological Union in Chicago, and later earning a doctorate in canon law from the Pontifical University of St. Thomas Aquinas. In Rome, what makes Leo VI's story particularly remarkable is what happened next. Rather than pursuing a comfortable academic career in the United States or a prestigious position in Rome, the newly ordained Father Prevost requested assignment to the Augustinian missions in Peru. This decision would transform him from an American intellectual into a shepherd who truly understood the global church. In Peru, Father Prevost encountered a reality far removed from Chicago's neighborhoods. He lived among people struggling with extreme poverty, political instability, and limited access to education and healthcare. Instead of being overwhelmed, he immersed himself completely, learning perfect Spanish, embracing local customs, and most importantly, listening to the people he served. "When you listen with your heart," he once said in a homily in Chulucanas, "you begin to see with God's eyes." This philosophy guided his ministry as he worked tirelessly to establish schools, organize community support systems, and bring both spiritual comfort and practical help to those in need. His leadership abilities soon became evident. By 1999, Prevost was elected prior provincial of the Augustinians in Peru. His brother Augustinians recognized in him not just administrative competence, but a genuine shepherd's heart. What distinguished Prevost was his balanced approach. He was neither an ideologue nor a revolutionary, but a thoughtful pastor who sought practical solutions while remaining faithful to church teaching. Those who worked with him during this period describe a man of profound prayer who never lost sight of everyday realities. Sister Maria Elena, who collaborated with him on educational projects in Chulucanas, recalls, Father Robert could move from discussing theology with scholars to fixing the plumbing in our school without missing a beat. He never saw any workers beneath him if it helped the people we served. This combination of intellectual depth, practical wisdom, and humble service caught the attention of Pope John Paul II, who in 2005 appointed Prevost as Bishop of Chiclayo, Peru. As bishop, he continued his hands-on approach, becoming known for regularly visiting the most remote parishes of his diocese, sitting with ordinary families and addressing practical concerns while providing spiritual leadership. What makes this particularly relevant for us today is how Bishop Prevost navigated the challenges of a church at the crossroads of tradition and renewal. Peru, like many parts of Latin America, was experiencing both the growth of evangelical Protestantism and secularization in urban areas. Rather than retreating into defensiveness, Bishop Prevost implemented what he called a ministry of encounter, training lay catechists, revitalizing liturgies, and creating community centers where faith could be lived in practical ways. Faith without action is empty, he often told his priests, but action without faith has no lasting power. We need both. This practical spirituality characterized his episcopal ministry and provides clues to the approach he may take as pope. Bishop Prevost's effectiveness in Peru led to his appointment as administrator of the Diocese of Callao during a difficult transition period. Here, he demonstrated another quality that would later recommend him to the College of Cardinals, his ability to heal divisions and build consensus. The diocese had been fractured by conflicts, but Bishop Prevost's patient listening and fair-minded approach gradually restored trust among clergy and laity alike. Perhaps most tellingly, when he was eventually called to Rome to serve as prefect of the dicastery for bishops, one of the most powerful positions in the Vatican, the people of Peru organized massive farewell celebrations. He came as a foreign missionary, said one local parishioner, but he leaves as one of our own. This ability to transcend cultural boundaries while respecting local traditions would become one of his greatest strengths. In Rome, Prevost's leadership style remained consistent, thoughtful, collaborative, and focused on practical results rather than ideology. As prefect of the dicastery for bishops, he was responsible for evaluating candidates for episcopal appointments worldwide, a role that gave him unique insight into the global church and its diverse challenges. Cardinal Prevost, as he became in 2023 when Pope Francis elevated him to the College of Cardinals, developed a reputation for thoroughly vetting candidates based on their pastoral abilities rather than their political or theological alignment. The church needs shepherds, not career climbers, he reportedly said during a meeting with nuncios, papal ambassadors. This emphasis on selecting bishops who smell like their sheep, as Pope Francis often put it, suggests that his papacy may continue the focus on a church that serves rather than one that simply administers. Throughout his time in Rome, Cardinal Prevost maintained his connection to both North and South America. As president of the Pontifical Commission for Latin America, he advocated for greater attention to the needs of the Church in developing nations, while also appreciating the contributions of the Church in more affluent regions. This balanced global perspective made him uniquely positioned to lead a truly universal church. When Pope Francis died unexpectedly on April 21, 2025, following complications from pneumonia, the church entered a period of mourning but also expectation. Who would follow the charismatic Argentine who had pushed for reform while maintaining the essentials of faith? As the cardinals gathered in Rome for the conclave, many observers noted Cardinal Prevost's unique profile. a man with deep experience in both the centers and peripheries of the Church. The conclave began on May 7th with 133 cardinal electors entering the Sistine Chapel. While the deliberations remained secret, Vatican observers noted the relatively quick election, just 2 days and 4 ballots, suggesting a growing consensus around Prevost as a candidate who could bridge divides within the College of Cardinals. When Cardinal Dominique Mamberti appeared on the central balcony of St. Peter's Basilica to announce Habemus Papam, we have a pope, few outside Vatican circles had expected Prevost's name. Yet the choice made immediate sense, a pope with American organizational efficiency and Latin American pastoral sensitivity. A leader formed in Augustinian spirituality with its emphasis on community and service. A man of the center who could understand both progressives and traditionalists. The new pope's choice of the name Leo V carried its own significance. Leo XIII, who served as pope from 1878 to 1903, is remembered for his landmark social encyclical Rerum Novarum, which addressed the conditions of workers and established principles of Catholic social teaching that remain relevant today. By choosing this name, the new pope signaled both continuity with tradition and a commitment to applying church teaching to contemporary social challenges. In his first appearance on the balcony of St. Peter's, Pope Leo XII demonstrated the qualities that had endeared him to people across his diverse ministry. Speaking first in Italian, then in Spanish, and finally in English, he conveyed both respect for tradition and awareness of the global nature of the Church. "Peace be with all of you," he began, echoing the risen Christ's greeting. "I would like this greeting of peace to enter your hearts." What struck many observers was the new pope's emotional response, visibly moved, even tearful at points, showing a humanity that resonated with the crowds in St. Peter's Square. His first words emphasized themes that would likely define his papacy: peace, synodality, walking together as a church, and a special concern for those who suffer. He also acknowledged his predecessor directly. "Thank you, Pope Francis," he said, indicating continuity rather than rupture with the Argentine Pope's reform agenda. This gesture of gratitude suggested that Leo XI would build upon rather than dismantle the work Francis had begun. If we look at the path that brought Robert Francis Prevost to the chair of St. Peter, certain patterns emerge that may give us insight into the kind of pope he will be. First, his extensive experience in both North and South America positions him uniquely to understand the Church as it exists in both affluent and developing nations. In a world increasingly divided between global North and South, Pope Leo XII bridges these worlds not just symbolically, but through lived experience. Second, his Augustinian formation emphasizes both intellectual rigor and practical charity, a combination the Church desperately needs in addressing complex modern challenges. St. Augustine himself was a brilliant philosopher who also understood the human heart, famously writing that our hearts are restless until they rest in you, O Lord. Pope Leo likely brings this same combination of intellectual depth and spiritual insight. Third, his administrative experience in Peru, in his religious order and in the Roman Curia demonstrates his ability to implement practical reforms while respecting institutional continuity. The Catholic Church today faces significant administrative challenges, from financial transparency to addressing the ongoing abuse crisis, and Leo XII's track record suggests he has both the will and the skill to continue needed reforms. Perhaps most importantly, throughout his ministry, Prevost has demonstrated an ability to listen before acting, a quality that may serve him well in navigating the polarized waters of modern Catholicism. In an era when many religious discussions quickly descend into ideological battle, his reputation as a bridge builder rather than a culture warrior suggests a different approach to leadership. As we witness the beginning of this historic papacy, the first American pope, a shepherd who knows both wealth and poverty, tradition and innovation, we might ask ourselves what it means for our own spiritual journey. If Pope Leo XIII embodies a faith that balances intellectual depth with pastoral sensitivity, how might we cultivate similar balance in our own lives? In a world that often forces us to choose between false dichotomies, between faith and reason, tradition and progress, justice and mercy, the new Holy Father's life story reminds us that authentic Catholicism has always embraced both and rather than either-or thinking. His papacy may offer us a model of how to remain firmly rooted in tradition while courageously facing contemporary challenges. You know, as I reflect on this historic moment, I'm reminded of how our faith journey connects with every aspect of our lives, including how we approach our finances and care for our health. Pope Leo XII's background shows us a man who understood both material resources and human needs. In Peru, he didn't just preach spiritual truths. He helped communities develop sustainable practices that improved their well-being. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this historic selection. Are you excited about the first American Pope? What changes do you hope to see in the Church under his leadership? Please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and share your perspective in the comments below. Where are you watching from? Your engagement helps us build this community of faith-filled seekers who want to grow together in wisdom. Now let's continue exploring what this new papacy might mean for the future of the Church and for each of us personally. The international reaction to Pope Leo XII's election has been fascinating to observe. In the United States, both religious and political leaders expressed a sense of national pride tempered with awareness that a pope serves the universal church, not national interests. President James Morrison called it a proud moment for American Catholics and for our nation, while recognizing that Pope Leo V now belongs to the world and to his global flock. American Catholics, who have sometimes felt marginalized within the global church despite their financial contributions, responded with enthusiasm but also curiosity about how their countrymen might approach the papacy differently than his European and Latin American predecessors. In Latin America, the response was particularly emotional. Peruvian President Maria Angeles Valdez declared a national day of celebration, noting that, although he was born in the United States, Pope Leo XIII formed his pastoral heart in the mountains and cities of Peru. Throughout Latin America, where Catholicism faces growing competition from evangelical denominations, many expressed hope that the new pope would understand their unique challenges. European reactions were more measured, with many church leaders expressing cautious optimism that the new pope would continue Francis's reforms while bringing fresh perspective. Cardinal Matteo Zuppi of Bologna noted that the Holy Spirit has given us a pope who understands both the center and peripheries of our church, an important quality for these complex times. In Africa and Asia, where the Catholic Church continues to grow rapidly, religious leaders welcomed the selection of a pope with missionary experience. Cardinal Malcolm Ranjith of Sri Lanka observed that Pope Leo's experience in Peru shows he understands the Church in the developing world. We hope he will continue to decentralize authority and listen to our unique voices. As we await Pope Leo XII's first official acts and statements, Vatican observers are already identifying likely priorities for the new papacy based on his past work and initial comments. First among these is likely to be a continued emphasis on synodality, the process of walking together and listening to all members of the Church that Francis strongly promoted. In his first words, Leo XIII specifically mentioned creating a synodal church that moves forward, suggesting this will remain central to his approach. Second, his background in both canon law and practical pastoral work indicates he may continue balancing necessary institutional reforms with fidelity to Catholic teaching. As one Vatican official noted, he knows both how to read the code of canon law and how to apply it with mercy in real human situations. Third, Pope Leo XIV will almost certainly continue the Church's emphasis on care for the environment and economic justice, themes that were central to Francis's papacy, but which also align with Prevost's own experiences in Peru. Having witnessed firsthand the devastating effects of environmental degradation on poor communities, the new Pope understands the interconnection between ecological and human well-being. A faith that does not concern itself with how we care for our common home and for our brothers and sisters in need is not the faith of Jesus Christ, he said during a 2023 conference on Laudato Si, Pope Francis's landmark environmental encyclical. This suggests that the Church will continue to be a moral voice on issues of climate change, sustainable development, and economic systems that serve the common good rather than just the wealthy few. What makes Pope Leo XIV's perspective particularly valuable is that he has seen both extreme poverty in Peru and extreme wealth in the United States and Vatican. He understands that true stewardship of resources is neither about accumulating wealth for its own sake, nor about rejecting material goods entirely, but rather about using what we have been given wisely and generously. This balanced approach to material resources reflects a deeper spiritual wisdom that we can all apply in our own lives. Just as the new Pope learned to navigate between different economic realities, we too can find a middle path between materialism and asceticism, valuing what we have, using it prudently, and sharing with those in need. In our own financial journeys, we might ask, am I managing my resources in a way that serves not just my own needs, but contributes to the common good? Am I investing in things that bring lasting value rather than fleeting pleasure? These questions reflect the kind of integrated spirituality that Pope Leo's background suggests he will promote. Fourth, the new Pope is expected to continue addressing the ongoing clergy abuse crisis with the same zero-tolerance approach that his predecessors established. His experience in canon law and his administrative roles have given him insight into both the legal and human dimensions of this painful issue. While serving in the dicastery for bishops, he was known for thoroughly vetting candidates to ensure they had both moral integrity and the pastoral skills to protect the vulnerable. The Church must be the safest place for children and vulnerable adults, he stated firmly during a 2024 interview. This requires not just protocols, but a complete culture change. His commitment to both justice for victims and prevention of future abuse will likely remain a cornerstone of his papacy. Fifth, Pope Leo II's background in two very different cultural contexts may inform a fresh approach to evangelization, the Church's mission to share the gospel in the modern world. In Peru, he witnessed how Catholicism could remain vibrant through strong community bonds and practical faith expression, while in the United States and Europe, he observed the challenges of secularization and individualism. Our faith is not a personal hobby, he once remarked, but a community journey toward God. This emphasis on faith as both personal and communal may inform how he guides the Church's outreach in diverse global contexts, from highly secularized Western societies to regions where faith remains strong but needs deeper formation. As we consider the spiritual implications of this historic transition, it's worth reflecting on how Pope Leo's journey might inspire our own. His life demonstrates that authentic faith requires both deep roots and adaptability. Maintaining core convictions while responding to new challenges with creativity and courage. In many ways, this balance mirrors the challenges we face in our own spiritual lives. How do we remain faithful to timeless truths while engaging meaningfully with contemporary questions? How do we preserve what is essential while being open to necessary growth and change? The new Pope's life and ministry offer clues to navigating these tensions. His Augustinian formation also brings a particular spiritual perspective that may shape his papacy and offer wisdom for our own faith journeys. St. Augustine's emphasis on the restless human heart, finding peace only in God, speaks powerfully to our modern context of constant distraction and consumption. In a world that often seeks fulfillment in material possessions, career advancement, or digital validation, Augustine's insight that our deepest longing is for God himself remains profoundly relevant. Pope Leo VII seems likely to encourage a spirituality that addresses this restlessness, not through more consumption, but through deeper communion with God, with others, and with creation. His experiences in poor communities taught him that true wealth comes not from possessions, but from relationships and purpose. This wisdom applies regardless of our financial circumstances. For those of us seeking to live more intentionally, the new Pope's background offers a model of integration, where faith informs every aspect of life, including how we manage our resources, care for our bodies, and engage with our communities. Just as he brought both his intellectual training and his heart for service to each role he filled, we too can bring our whole selves to our faith journey. One particularly relevant aspect of Augustinian spirituality is its emphasis on community as the context for spiritual growth. Unlike some spiritual traditions that focus primarily on individual practice, Augustine saw the journey toward God as necessarily communal. This may be especially important in our age of increasing isolation and digital rather than physical connection. We discover who we truly are in relationship with others, Prevost said in a 2022 interview. The pandemic taught us that while technology can connect us in important ways, it cannot replace the embodied community that forms us as humans and as believers. This insight might shape how Leo XII approaches both church governance, emphasizing synodality and consultation, and pastoral guidance, encouraging meaningful community formation. The concept of the church as a field hospital, which Pope Francis often emphasized, seems likely to continue under Leo IV, given his hands-on experience in communities facing various forms of suffering. This image of the church, not as a perfect society of the already saved, but as a community of wounded healers, serving a wounded world, resonates with Prevost's pastoral approach throughout his ministry. In Peru, he was known for establishing health clinics alongside churches and schools, recognizing that spiritual care must be accompanied by physical care. Jesus healed bodies as well as souls. He would often remind his priests and pastoral workers, we must do the same. This holistic understanding of human flourishing aligns with Catholic teaching that has always viewed physical and spiritual well-being as interconnected rather than separate domains. For those of us seeking to care for both our spiritual and physical health, Pope Leo's approach offers valuable wisdom. Just as he recognized the connection between material poverty and spiritual opportunity in Peru, we might consider how our physical health practices can either support or hinder our spiritual growth. Do our eating habits reflect stewardship of the bodies God has given us? Does our approach to rest and activity create space for prayer and reflection? These questions reflect an integrated approach to well-being that transcends the typical mind-body dualism of Western culture. We might also consider how our communities either promote or undermine holistic health. One of Prevost's initiatives, In Peru was creating community gardens where families could grow nutritious food while building relationships and caring for creation, addressing physical, social, and spiritual needs simultaneously. This model of integrated community care may inform his approach to global challenges like food insecurity, mental health crises, and ecological degradation. Another significant aspect of Pope Leo XII's background that may shape his papacy is his experience navigating cultural differences and building bridges across divides. Having lived as an American in Peru and then as a Peru-formed leader in Rome, he developed what one colleague described as a remarkable ability to see beyond cultural assumptions and find common ground. In an increasingly polarized world, where religious and political differences often seem unbridgeable, this capacity for dialogue without compromising core principles may prove especially valuable. The Catholic Church itself contains diverse perspectives that sometimes conflict: traditional and progressive, global north and south, hierarchical and participatory. Pope Leo's experience suggests he may approach these tensions not by imposing uniformity, but by seeking unity within legitimate diversity. The Church has always been both universal and particular, he observed during a 2024 lecture at the Gregorian University. We share one faith expressed through many cultures and contexts. Our challenge is to maintain essential unity while honoring the gifts that each tradition brings. This approach, unity and diversity rather than uniformity, may characterize his leadership style and offer a model for addressing divisions in both church and society. As we watch for the first formal acts and statements of Pope Leo XII's papacy, several key moments will be particularly revealing. His selection of close advisors and curial appointments will indicate whether he plans major structural reforms or more gradual changes. His first apostolic journey, where he chooses to visit first, will signal geographic and thematic priorities, and his first major document will establish intellectual and spiritual touchstones for his pontificate. Early indications suggest he may emphasize what he has called practical faith, spirituality expressed through concrete actions rather than abstract theories. We know what we truly believe by observing what we actually do, he once told a group of seminarians. Faith that doesn't change how we live is merely an intellectual exercise. This integration of belief and action has characterized his own ministry and may become a hallmark of his papal teaching. For Catholics and other people of goodwill watching this transition of leadership, Pope Leo XII's election offers an opportunity for reflection on our own approach to faith and life. If his journey demonstrates anything, it's that authentic spirituality cannot be compartmentalized. It must inform every dimension of our existence, from our prayer lives to our spending habits, from our care for our bodies to our engagement with social issues. I'd like to invite you to join our growing community of viewers who are seeking this kind of integrated wisdom for their own lives. If you're finding value in this exploration, please subscribe to our channel, hit the notification bell, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Where are you watching from? What aspects of Pope Leo XII's background most resonate with you? Your perspective enriches our shared conversation. Now let's consider some practical implications of Pope Leo XII's election for the everyday Catholic and for the future direction of the Church. Based on his background and early statements, we might anticipate several significant emphases in his papacy. First, his extensive missionary experience suggests he will continue the Church's movement from maintenance to mission, from simply preserving existing structures to actively reaching out to those on the peripheries. In Peru, he was known for literally going to the margins, traveling to remote villages accessible only by foot or mule to ensure that all communities had access to the sacraments and pastoral care. A church that waits for people to come to it is a church that has forgotten. Its purpose, he once observed, Jesus sent us to go out to all nations, not to sit comfortably in our buildings. This missionary impulse may translate into continued emphasis on forming lay leaders, simplifying church structures, and directing resources toward evangelization rather than institutional maintenance. For parish communities, this could mean a renewed call to move beyond what Pope Francis called pastoral care of the chandelier, simply maintaining beautiful buildings and traditional programs, toward creative outreach to those who would never enter a church building. Prevost's experience creating storefront ministry centers in Chulucanas might provide a model for parishes seeking to reach their communities in new ways. Second, Pope Leo XIII's background in both affluent and developing nations positions him to address economic disparities with particular insight. Having witnessed extreme poverty in Peru and worked within the resource-rich Vatican, he understands both scarcity and abundance from first-hand experience. True prosperity is not measured by what we possess, but by what we share, he said during a 2023 economic conference. A society that allows extreme wealth alongside extreme poverty has lost its moral compass. This perspective, consistent with Catholic social teaching, suggests he will continue to challenge economic systems that prioritize profit over human dignity. For individual Catholics, this may translate into renewed emphasis on what we might call financial discipleship, managing our resources in ways that reflect gospel values rather than consumer culture. In Peru, Bishop Prevost established parish-based financial literacy programs that helped families budget effectively while also incorporating spiritual principles of generosity and contentment. How we handle money reveals what we truly value, he would tell participants. When our financial decisions align with our faith, we experience a freedom that no amount of wealth can provide. This practical wisdom offers a refreshing alternative to both prosperity, gospel materialism, and simplistic rejections of wealth as inherently corrupting. Third, Pope Leo XIV's lifelong commitment to education, from teaching mathematics to establishing schools in Peru to forming seminarians, suggests that intellectual formation will remain a priority under his leadership. But his approach to education has always been integrative rather than merely academic, combining rigorous thinking with practical application and spiritual growth. In Chulucanas, he established schools that taught not only traditional subjects but also practical skills, environmental stewardship, and community responsibility. Education should form the whole person, he insisted, head, hands, and heart. This holistic approach challenges the fragmentation that often characterizes modern education and offers a model for Catholic schools seeking to maintain their distinctive identity. For adult Catholics seeking ongoing formation, the new Pope's background suggests he will encourage learning that connects faith with everyday life. Bible study that leads to changed behavior, theological reflection that informs ethical decisions, and spiritual reading that deepens prayer. His own intellectual journey from mathematics to theology to law demonstrates the value of diverse knowledge unified by faith. Fourth, Pope Leo V's Augustinian spirituality may bring renewed emphasis on interior transformation as the foundation for external action. St. Augustine's famous conversion narrative in his Confessions describes not just a change in beliefs, but a complete reorientation of desires, learning to love God and neighbor above all else. Throughout his ministry, Prevost has emphasized that authentic Christian life flows from this transformed heart. Rules without relationship lead to rebellion, he told a group of parents during a catechetical conference. But when we experience God's love, obedience becomes a response of gratitude rather than mere compliance. This focus on interior motivation rather than external conformity aligns with Francis's emphasis on discernment and may continue to shape how the Church approaches moral formation. For individuals seeking spiritual growth, this suggests that meaningful change comes not primarily through willpower or rigid discipline, but through cultivating deeper desires for God and His purposes. Practices like contemplative prayer, scripture meditation, and spiritual direction, all part of the Augustinian tradition, help reorient our hearts toward lasting values rather than fleeting pleasures. Fifth, Pope Leo XIII's experience living with indigenous communities in Peru may inform a continued emphasis on caring for creation as an essential dimension of faith. In Andean villages, he witnessed both the beauty of harmonious relationships with the land and the devastating consequences when that harmony is disrupted by exploitative practices. When we damage creation, we damage ourselves, he observed during an ecological retreat in 2021. Everything is connected, as Pope Francis taught us in Laudato Si. Our spiritual health, our physical well-being, and the health of our planet cannot be separated. This integrated understanding of ecology reflects both Francis's teaching and indigenous wisdom traditions that Provost encountered in Peru. For Catholics seeking to live faithfully in an age of environmental crisis, this perspective offers a spirituality that unites care for creation with care for our bodies and communities. Simple practices like mindful consumption, reduced waste, and reconnection with natural environments become not just ecological choices, but spiritual disciplines that align our lives with God's intentions for creation. When we slow down and notice the gift of creation, Prevost has suggested, we begin to recognize ourselves as stewards rather than owners, participants rather than consumers. This shift in perspective changes everything about how we live. This wisdom applies whether we live in urban apartments or rural homesteads, inviting all of us to more conscious relationship with the created world. As we anticipate Pope Leo XII's formal installation and the unfolding of his papacy, perhaps the most significant insight from his life journey is the power of integration, bringing together seemingly separate domains into a coherent whole. His life demonstrates that we need not choose between north and south, tradition and innovation, spiritual and material concerns. Rather, authentic faith embraces complexity and seeks unity within diversity. For a church often perceived as divided between progressive and traditional factions, his leadership may offer a third way, faithful to essential tradition while responsive to contemporary challenges, committed to clear teaching while approaching complex situations with pastoral sensitivity. This is not compromise for its own sake, but the recognition that truth itself is symphonic rather than monolithic. God's truth is too big for any single perspective, he once told a group of seminary professors. We need diverse voices and experiences to glimpse its fullness. This epistemological humility, recognizing the limitations of our own viewpoint, does not relativize truth, but acknowledges its richness and depth. As we close this exploration of Pope Leo XII's background and what it might mean for the future of the Church, I invite you to consider how his journey might inspire your own. How might you more fully integrate faith with every dimension of your life? Your work, your relationships, your health practices, your financial decisions. How might you, like him, bridge divides rather than deepen them? The election of the first American Pope, particularly one with such extensive global experience, reminds us that God often works in unexpected ways, bringing forth leadership from unlikely places. Just as Prevost's journey took him from Chicago to Peru to Rome and finally to the chair of St. Peter, our own spiritual journeys may follow surprising paths as we remain open to God's guidance. Whatever the future holds for Pope Leo VII's papacy, his life story already offers us a compelling model of integrated faith, intellectual without being abstract, spiritual without being disconnected, practical without being shallow. May his leadership inspire each of us to similar integration in our own journey of faith. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what aspects of Pope Leo VIII's background most inspire you. Please share in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more content that explores the intersection of faith, financial wisdom, and holistic well-being. Where are you watching from? Your participation makes this more than a channel. It makes us a community journeying together toward deeper wisdom and more authentic faith. As we await Pope Leo VI's first encyclical and formal teaching documents, early indications from Vatican sources suggest he may focus on what has been called the spirituality of everyday life, finding God not just in extraordinary moments, but in the ordinary routines of work, family, and community. This theme connects directly with his experiences in Peru, where he witnessed profound faith among people navigating daily struggles. Sometimes we think we need to escape ordinary life to find God, he reflected during a retreat for lay leaders in 2022. But the Incarnation teaches us that God enters our ordinary world and transforms it from within. Holiness is found not by fleeing daily life, but by living it with extraordinary love. This insight challenges both the secularization that excludes God from ordinary affairs and the pietism that divorces spirituality from practical concerns. For Catholics seeking to live faithfully in complex modern contexts, this integrated approach offers a middle path between compartmentalized faith and withdrawal from society. It suggests that our work matters to God. Our financial decisions have spiritual significance. Our care for our bodies reflects our understanding of creation, and our daily interactions with others can become encounters with Christ himself. Pope Leo VII's background also suggests he may bring particular attention to what he has called the spirituality of limits, learning to live well within the boundaries of our humanity and our planet's capacity. In Peru, he observed communities that thrived despite material limitations by emphasizing relationship, creativity, and mutual support rather than consumption and competition. Our culture tells us that more is always better. More possessions, more achievements, more experiences, he noted during a conference on sustainable development, but true wisdom often lies in recognizing enough, in finding contentment within limits, in quality rather than quantity. This countercultural perspective offers spiritual guidance for societies facing both ecological constraints and the diminishing returns of consumer culture. For individuals seeking greater well-being, this spirituality of limits translates into practical wisdom about rest, work, consumption, and technology use. Boundaries are not restrictions on our freedom, but conditions for our flourishing. Prevost has suggested, when we honor the rhythms of work and rest, of solitude and community, of speaking and listening, we discover the freedom for which we were created. This wisdom applies not just to individuals, but to institutions, including the Church itself. Observers note that as prefect of the dicastery for bishops, Cardinal Prevost emphasized quality over quantity in episcopal appointments and diocesan programs. It's better to do fewer things well than many things poorly, he would advise bishops. Facing resource constraints, focus on what truly matters rather than trying to maintain everything that has always been done. This strategic approach to institutional leadership, prioritizing mission over maintenance, may characterize his papacy as the Church faces both demographic challenges in traditional Catholic regions and rapid growth in others. Rather than attempting to preserve unsustainable structures or programs, Pope Leo may encourage more focused, mission-oriented approaches that direct limited resources toward essential priorities. In terms of church governance, Vatican analysts anticipate that Pope Leo XV will continue the decentralization efforts begun under Francis, giving greater authority to local bishops' conferences and regional episcopal bodies. His experiences in Peru taught him that pastoral challenges often require contextualized responses, rather than one-size-fits-all solutions from Rome. Rome should provide clear principles and overall direction, he stated during a 2023 interview, but application often requires local wisdom and adaptation. This balanced approach, maintaining doctrinal unity while allowing pastoral flexibility, may help navigate the tension between universal teaching and diverse cultural contexts that the global church constantly faces. For lay people seeking to understand their own role in the church, Pope Leo's background suggests he will continue to emphasize co-responsibility rather than passive reception. In Peru, he was known for empowering lay leaders, especially women, to take significant responsibility in parishes and ministries. Rather than seeing the clergy shortage as simply a problem, he viewed it as an opportunity for broader participation in the church's mission. Every baptized person has gifts to offer and a mission to fulfill, he told a gathering of lay ministers in 2018. The church's future depends not just on priests and bishops, but on each member discovering and using their unique gifts for the common good. This theology of baptismal calling elevates the importance of ordinary Christians living faithfully in their daily contexts. The new Pope's approach to controversial issues facing the Church may be informed by what colleagues describe as his pastoral pragmatism, addressing real human situations with both fidelity to church teaching and sensitivity to complex circumstances. As bishop in Peru, he was known for establishing clear principles while encouraging priests to accompany people through messy realities with patience and compassion. Rigid application of rules without understanding context rarely leads to true conversion, he observed during a diocesan synod. We must hold fast to truth while walking alongside people on their journey toward it. This approach, sometimes described as accompanying discernment, balances clarity about moral teaching with recognition of gradual growth and complex personal circumstances. This pastoral approach extends to how Pope Leo V might address polarization within the Church itself. Rather than seeing disagreements as battles to be won, his track record suggests he views them as opportunities for deeper understanding through respectful dialogue. In Peru, he successfully brought together priests of different theological perspectives by focusing on their shared mission rather than their differences. What unites us is far greater than what divides us, he would remind them. We serve the same Lord, proclaim the same gospel, and minister to the same people. Our different perspectives can complement rather than contradict each other. This focus on essential unity amid legitimate diversity may help address the polarization that often mirrors secular political divisions. One particular strength that colleagues consistently mention is Pope Leo XV's ability to communicate complex theological concepts in accessible language. Despite his advanced academic training, he developed in Peru what one associate called a theology of the kitchen table, explaining profound truths through everyday examples that resonated with ordinary people. Faith that can't be explained to a child or an elderly person with limited education isn't the faith of Jesus Christ, he reportedly told his seminary professors. The gospel is profound but not complicated. It's meant for everyone, not just theologians. This communication style, clear, relatable, and practical, may characterize his papal teaching and help bridge the gap between academic theology and lived faith. For those of us seeking to deepen our understanding of faith while applying it practically, This approach offers valuable guidance. Complex theological concepts become meaningful when connected to everyday experience. Work becomes sacred when understood as participation in God's creative activity. Family relationships become schools of virtue when viewed through the lens of Trinitarian communion. Economic decisions become spiritual practices when informed by gospel values of generosity and justice. Pope Leo XII's experiences navigating between affluence and poverty also position him to address what he has called the spirituality of enough, finding the balance between material sufficiency and excess that allows for both security and generosity. In Peru, he witnessed communities with limited resources that nonetheless practiced remarkable hospitality and sharing. True wealth is having enough to share, he observed during a financial stewardship conference. When we move from asking, "How much more can I get?" to what is truly enough, we discover both contentment and the joy of generosity. This perspective challenges the insatiable consumption that drives both personal debt and environmental degradation, offering instead a vision of sufficiency that creates margin for giving. For Americans and others living in affluent societies, this wisdom is particularly countercultural, yet potentially liberating. Studies consistently show that beyond basic needs, additional consumption yields diminishing returns in terms of happiness and well-being. Pope Leo's background suggests he will encourage Catholics to seek what he has called the freedom of enough, having sufficient resources while being liberated from the endless pursuit of more. Contentment is not about settling for less than we need, he clarified during a retreat for business leaders. It's about recognizing what we truly need and finding freedom from artificial wants created by advertising and social comparison. This balanced approach neither glorifies poverty nor demonizes wealth, but seeks the wise middle path of sufficiency and stewardship. This perspective on material resources connects directly with physical and spiritual well-being, another area where Pope Leo XII's integrated approach offers wisdom. In Peru, he observed the connection between economic pressures, physical health challenges, and spiritual well-being. His response was to establish integrated support systems that addressed all three dimensions simultaneously. One innovative program he developed in Chiclayo combined financial literacy, preventive healthcare education, and spiritual formation for families. Participants learned practical budgeting skills alongside basic health practices and prayer disciplines. We cannot separate these dimensions of human flourishing, he explained. Financial stress affects physical health. Poor health creates financial challenges, and both impact our spiritual lives. This holistic approach to human development, addressing body, mind, and spirit together, reflects the Catholic understanding of the human person as an integrated whole rather than a collection of separate parts. It offers a refreshing alternative to the fragmentation that often characterizes modern approaches to well-being, where financial advisors, healthcare providers, and spiritual directors rarely coordinate their guidance. For individuals seeking greater wholeness, Pope Leo's integrated approach suggests practical wisdom. Regular physical activity becomes not just health maintenance, but a spiritual discipline of stewarding the body. Mindful eating becomes not just nutritional wisdom, but gratitude for creation's gifts. Financial planning becomes not just prudent resource management, but aligning material decisions with deeper values. Our daily habits reveal and shape what we truly value, he observed during a parish mission. When we bring intentionality to these ordinary routines, how we eat, move, rest, spend, save, and give, we gradually align our whole lives with our deepest values. This practical spirituality transforms mundane activities into meaningful practices that form us over time. Pope Leo X's Augustinian formation also brings attention to what he has called the ordering of loves, learning to love different goods in proper proportion and priority. In a world of constant demands for our attention and resources, this ancient wisdom offers guidance for making choices that reflect our deepest values, rather than merely responding to the loudest voices or most immediate pressures. The key question is not whether something is good, he explained to young adults during a vocational retreat, but whether it is the right good for this moment and for your particular calling. This discernment process, distinguishing between multiple goods rather than simply between good and evil, helps navigate complex decisions about time, relationships, career paths, and resource allocation. For Catholics seeking practical guidance for daily decisions, this approach offers a middle path between rigid rules and directionless relativism. It acknowledges moral absolutes while recognizing that many life choices involve discerning between legitimate options based on our particular circumstances, capacities, and callings. This nuanced approach respects both objective moral truths and subjective personal factors. As we look toward the formal installation of Pope Leo XI and the beginning of his papacy, one theme emerges consistently from his background and early statements: integration rather than fragmentation. Throughout his ministry, he has consistently brought together elements that are often separated: north and south, intellectual and practical, traditional and innovative, spiritual and material, personal and communal. This integrative approach offers wisdom not just for church leadership but for our individual lives as well. In a culture that tends to compartmentalize, separating work from family, faith from finances, physical health from spiritual well-being, Pope Leo's example challenges us to seek greater wholeness and coherence. The divided life leads to divided hearts, he observed during a retreat for professionals. When our Sunday faith has no connection to our Monday work, when our spiritual values don't inform our financial decisions, when our prayer life is disconnected from our bodily habits, we experience the stress of inner fragmentation rather than the peace of integration. For those seeking greater well-being in all dimensions of life, this wisdom suggests practical steps toward integration. Establishing daily practices that connect faith with ordinary activities, making financial decisions in light of deeper values rather than just immediate desires, caring for our bodies as part of our spiritual discipline, bringing awareness of God's presence into work and family interactions. Integration doesn't happen automatically, Pope Leo has noted. It requires intentional practice, regular moments of reflection that connect our various activities with our core identity and purpose. These moments might include an evening review of the day, Sabbath practices that create space for deeper perspective, or regular conversations with spiritual companions who help us notice connections and contradictions in our lives. Pope Leo and Dive's background also suggests he will bring particular attention to what he has called the spirituality of relationship, recognizing that we become fully human only in communion with others. His Augustinian formation emphasizes that even our relationship with God is not purely individual, but mediated through community, the Church as the body of Christ. In Peru, he observed how traditional communities maintained resilience through strong relational networks that provided both practical support and meaningful identity. In North American and European societies, he noted during a conference on mental health, we often sacrifice relationship for achievement and efficiency, resulting in material abundance but relational poverty. This trade-off proves costly in terms of mental health and spiritual well-being. For people in individualistic societies, this relational wisdom offers a corrective to isolation and suggests practical ways to strengthen community bonds, prioritizing family meals and conversations, participating in faith communities that practice mutual support, building friendships that go beyond shared activities to meaningful sharing of life's journey, contributing time and talent to community initiatives that address shared challenges. Relationship requires two things we often lack: time and vulnerability, Pope Leo observed. We must intentionally create margin in our schedules for connection, and we must be willing to be known rather than just presenting our accomplished selves. This countercultural approach challenges both the busyness that crowds out relationship and the perfectionism that prevents authentic sharing. As we anticipate the formal installation Mass and First Apostolic Journeys of Pope Leo III, Vatican observers are already speculating about symbolic choices that might signal his priorities. Will his first international trip be to Latin America, affirming his connection to the region that formed his pastoral heart? Will he visit the United States, acknowledging his roots while challenging his home country on issues of economic justice and care for creation? Or might he surprise observers with an unexpected choice that transcends expected categories? Similarly, his selection of advisors and key curial appointments will indicate whether he plans significant structural reforms or more gradual adjustments to Vatican operations. Will he bring voices from the global south into positions of greater influence? Will he continue Francis's practice of appointing cardinals from peripheral regions rather than traditional centers of church power? These early decisions will provide clues to his governing philosophy and priorities. Whatever specific choices he makes, colleagues who have worked closely with Cardinal Prevost, now Pope Leo XIII, consistently describe certain qualities that are likely to characterize his leadership: thoughtful rather than impulsive decision-making, consultation before action, respect for tradition while being open to necessary innovation, and what one associate called determined gentleness, firmness, about essential principles combined with compassionate application. He listens before he speaks, noted one priest who worked with him in Peru. But when he does speak, his words carry the weight of careful reflection rather than mere reaction. This deliberative style may provide stability and direction for a church navigating complex global challenges while maintaining its essential mission of proclaiming Christ and serving humanity. For Catholics and others watching this historic transition, Pope Leo V's unique background offers hope that the Church can transcend false dichotomies and embrace a both, and rather than either-or approach to many issues, neither rigidly traditional nor rashly progressive. His record suggests a leader who values both continuity and development, both clear teaching and pastoral application, both institutional stability and missionary adaptability. As we conclude our exploration of this historic moment, the election of the first American Pope, a shepherd formed in both North and South, a leader with both intellectual depth and pastoral heart, I invite you to consider how his example might inspire your own journey toward greater integration and wholeness. In what areas of your life do you experience fragmentation rather than coherence? How might you bring your faith more fully into your financial decisions, your health practices, your work and relationships? What steps might you take toward the kind of integrated wisdom that Pope Leo XII's life exemplifies? I encourage you to share your thoughts and questions in the comments below. Your perspective enriches our shared exploration and helps build a community of seekers supporting one another on the journey toward authentic faith and holistic well-being. If you've found value in this discussion, please subscribe to our channel for more content that integrates spiritual wisdom with practical life guidance. As we look toward the future under Pope Leo XIV's leadership, we might remember his own words from a homily given shortly before the conclave. The Church's journey through history has never been straight or simple. Each age brings new challenges, that require both fidelity to our foundations and creative response to changing circumstances. But through it all, Christ remains the center who holds all things together. May this new chapter in the Church's life bring renewed hope, deeper unity, and fresh energy for the mission of proclaiming the gospel in word and deed. And may each of us find inspiration to live more integrated, purposeful lives regardless of our particular roles or circumstances. The installation Mass for Pope Leo X is scheduled for May 25th, the feast of St. Bede the Venerable, a fitting date for a pope who, like Bede, bridges different worlds through intellectual depth and pastoral wisdom. The ceremony will likely reflect both the solemn tradition of papal installations and the new pope's preference for simplicity and inclusion. Vatican sources indicate that representatives from all major world religions will be invited, along with delegates from Christian denominations and international organizations, reflecting Pope Leo's commitment to dialogue across differences. The liturgy may incorporate elements from both European tradition and Latin American expressions of faith, symbolizing the new pope's unique formation in diverse cultural contexts. The specific readings and themes chosen for this installation, Mass will provide additional clues to the new pope's vision and priorities. Will he emphasize missionary outreach as suggested by his background? Will he focus on unity amid diversity, reflecting his experience bridging different worlds? Will he highlight care for creation and the poor, continuing themes central to Francis's papacy? The homily he delivers on this occasion will likely establish key themes for his pontificate. For those unable to attend in person, the Vatican has announced that the ceremony will be live-streamed with commentary in multiple languages, allowing Catholics and interested observers worldwide to participate virtually in this historic moment. Parish communities around the world are being encouraged to hold prayer vigils and watch parties, transforming what could be merely a media event into a spiritual experience of church unity. As preparations continue for this formal beginning of Pope Leo XIV's ministry, the mood in Rome is one of cautious optimism, tinged with curiosity about how this American Pope with Peruvian heart will navigate the complex challenges facing the global church. Longtime Vatican observers note that while Francis began many important reforms, significant work remains in areas like financial transparency, addressing clergy abuse, empowering laity, and promoting ecological conversion. Continuity with Francis seems likely in terms of overall direction, notes one curial official. But Leo XIV will certainly bring his own style and emphasis based on his unique background and formation. This sentiment, expectation of fundamental continuity while allowing for distinctive approaches, seems widely shared among those who have worked with the new pope. Beyond formal ceremonies and official statements, perhaps the most revealing aspects of Pope Leo XIV's leadership will emerge in spontaneous moments and unscripted encounters. His predecessor Francis often made his strongest impressions through such moments, embracing a disfigured man in St. Peter's Square, visiting refugees on Lampedusa, stopping the Papam mobile to assist a fallen security guard. Those who know, Cardinal Prevost describes similar moments of genuine human connection throughout his ministry. In Peru, he was known for remembering names of ordinary parishioners years after meeting them, visiting the homes of the sick without cameras or fanfare, and listening attentively to people often marginalized or overlooked. His attentiveness makes you feel truly seen, observed Sister Maria Teresa, who worked with him in Chiclayo. When he speaks with you, whether you're a cardinal or a street vendor, you have his complete attention. This quality of presence, of truly seeing the person before him, may become one of the defining characteristics of his papal ministry. In an age of distraction and superficial communication, such attentiveness becomes not just a personal virtue, but a countercultural witness. Pope Leo's formation in both contemplative Augustinian spirituality and hands-on missionary work has cultivated what one colleague called an unusual capacity to be fully present wherever he is. This quality of presence extends beyond individual encounters to his approach to global issues. Rather than offering simplistic solutions to complex problems, he is known for taking time to understand root causes and cultural contexts before responding. This thoughtful approach frustrates those seeking immediate pronouncements, but ultimately leads to more substantial and sustainable responses. He doesn't just react to headlines, noted a diplomat who worked with him on humanitarian initiatives. In Peru, he seeks to understand the deeper currents, historical, cultural, economic, that shape current situations. This depth of analysis, combined with practical orientation toward solutions rather than mere commentary, may characterize his approach to challenges facing both church and world. For Catholics and others seeking to navigate an increasingly complex and polarized global context, this approach offers valuable guidance, taking time to understand before responding, looking beyond symptoms to underlying causes, considering diverse perspectives rather than accepting simplistic narratives, and maintaining focus on practical action rather than endless analysis or mere proclamation. These qualities, thoughtful, presence, integrated vision, and practical wisdom, have characterized Robert Francis Prevost throughout his journey from Chicago mathematician to Peruvian missionary to Vatican administrator, and now to Pope Leo V. They suggest not an ideological agenda, but a way of being and serving that transcends traditional categories while remaining firmly rooted in Catholic faith and tradition. As we anticipate his formal installation and the unfolding of his papacy, these qualities invite reflection on our own approach to faith and life. How might we cultivate greater presence with those we encounter? How might we develop more integrated understanding of complex situations? How might we translate our faith and values into practical action that serves the common good? The election of Pope Leo VI represents not just a new chapter in church leadership, but an opportunity for renewed reflection on our own participation in the church's mission. Whether as clergy, religious, or lay faithful, each of us contributes to how the gospel is embodied and proclaimed in our particular context. The new Pope's background reminds us that authentic faith transcends national, cultural, and ideological boundaries while being expressed through these particular identities. I encourage you to share your hopes and prayers for this new papal ministry in the comments below. What aspects of Pope Leo VI's background most inspire you? What challenges do you hope he will address? How might his example inspire your own faith journey? Your perspective enriches our shared conversation and creates community across geographical distances. As we conclude this exploration of Pope Leo VI's background and its implications for the Church and our own lives, I invite you to subscribe to our channel for ongoing coverage of his papacy and continuing reflection on integrated faith that addresses all dimensions of human flourishing: spiritual, relational, physical, and material. Together, we can support one another in living the kind of wholehearted faith that the new Pope's journey exemplifies. In a world often divided by nationality, ideology, and economic status, the election of Robert Francis Prevost as Pope Leo VI offers a powerful symbol of unity that transcends these boundaries while honoring particular identities and experiences. His life journey, from American student to Peruvian missionary to global church leader, reminds us that authentic faith is always both universal and particular, both rooted in tradition and responsive to new contexts. May his leadership inspire each of us to similar integration in our own lives, bringing together faith and action, prayer and service, spiritual wisdom and practical decisions, personal devotion and community engagement. And may we find in his example encouragement to bridge divides rather than deepen them, to seek understanding across differences and to pursue the common good rather than merely partisan interests. Whatever the future holds, this historic moment invites us to renewed hope in God's continued guidance of the Church through history's complexities. As Pope Leo X said in his first words from the balcony of St. Peter's, "God loves everyone, and evil will not prevail. We are all in God's hands. Therefore, without fear, united hand in hand with the God who is among us." May these words inspire confidence as we journey together into this new chapter of church history, seeking to live our faith with integrity, courage, and love. Thank you for joining me in this exploration. May God bless you and those you love, and may Pope Leo X's ministry bring renewed life and hope to the Church and world. As we prepare to conclude, let me invite you one more time to share your thoughts in the comments section below. What aspects of Pope Leo X's background most resonate with you? What hopes do you have for his papacy? How might his example inspire your own journey of faith? I look forward to continuing this conversation with you. Thank you for your attention and engagement. Until next time, may you experience the integration of faith, wisdom, and well-being in your own life journey. God bless you